In today's video, I'm gonna weave something with the scraps I organized in the last video. So let's get started. So this morning when I was thinking about starting this project, I remembered that I have these wood canvases, and so I thought this might be a fun project to actually mount on one of these. And I mean, heck, maybe I'll end up doing a couple of them because I do have two. So my initial inspiration for this piece was either you're looking top down, so imagine you're in a helicopter and you're looking top down at a field of flowers or maybe a forest, especially a forest like when the leaves are starting to change. And I know it's not fall right now, but that's kind of like the texture I want to achieve because this is going to be a very shaggy piece. And when I think about that, I think something very natural. And so I want this piece to feel like that. That being said, I don't have all the colors in the world to create this with scraps. So I'm also gonna have to keep that in mind that while that's the initial inspiration, that might not be where this piece ends up, but I am okay with that because I feel like what I find is just having some sort of initial inspiration is usually enough for me to get started. And then if it drifts away from that, once I actually start weaving, I'm okay with that because I think that's where unique ideas kind of come out, is when you allow yourself not to stay super strict with a particular inspiration. So for this one, I am gonna use our smaller flat pack frame loom because it's kind of the perfect size to be able to make something for this little wood canvas that I have. I'm gonna put a warp on this loom and I'm gonna go for a 412 linen because it's nice and stiff and strong. So when I actually put the piece on the wood canvas, likely what I will do is actually drill holes into the back and fishing the warp string into it to like attach it to this. And so the easiest way for me to do that is with the linen warp string because it's a little bit more stiff. Now, if I do that, I do have to keep in mind that my piece can actually only be approximately this size because otherwise I'm trying to drill through, you know, this really thick part where I kind of want to just stick with this part. I'm gonna have that beside me so that I can reference it. And I'm just grabbing my spool of 412 linen. I think we're gonna go for a single warp. You know, at the end of the day, we're experimenting, so I have to keep that in mind. So I'm just gonna lay my loom over top of this wood canvas so that I can make my warp about the size of this. So I wanna make my warp live just inside of this frame. And I'm just doing a single warp, so just one string between each of the notches. So you can see that I'm about spot on right there, but I know with more of these shaggy, tufty kind of pieces, sometimes the warp can actually go out rather than in like it usually does with other styles of weaving. So I might want to keep this just slightly narrower than it needs to be, so I know that I'm going to remain inside of these border lines, if you will. So I'm gonna stop here. Okay, so we've got that started. And now I'm going to tape down my loom. And I am gonna put a piece of cardstock at the bottom of this. I'm not gonna be doing all the same structural things that I would normally do at the bottom of a weaving for this one, just because if I do, when I attach it to this, the warp strings are just gonna go straight into this, but I do wanna make sure that I have enough warp string on each end to do that. My idea is to almost do little tufts of color. So maybe this won't end up looking like any specific inspiration at all, but I kinda have to just start somewhere and play around with things before I can really decide where this is going, because when it comes to translating an inspiration into an actual piece, especially when you're trying to use scraps, meaning you can't just pick any color in the world, any material in the world, we're working with what we have, I'm gonna have to play around a bit to start being able to envision what that looks like. I also think another really cool idea for a scraps piece would be to just use a singular color. Like imagine if I made one that was just all off-white, but there's a few different textures going on, and like, so that could be really cool. Currently feeling a little bit intimidating, so I'm just gonna play around a bit and you can be sort of the fly on the wall, or I guess the fly on the roof in our case, and I'll see what I can come up with. Okay, immediately I'm like, I think I need some sort of structure at the bottom. The problem is I don't know which color to use for that because I don't fully know where I'm going yet. However, if I put in a twining stitch at the bottom of this, I can always remove it later, but it will sort of hold things together when I take this off the loom. So I've got this nice little bundle. That might be the perfect length for that. So I'm gonna do a quick twining stitch that I can always remove later, just because I already feel like there's like a lack of sturdiness. And even though this piece doesn't require a lot of structure, I am going to be putting a little bit of plain weave in it so that it's not just completely all over the place floppy when I take it off the loom. All right, so I've done a little bit of weaving. So what I did is I have a few different shades of yellow in here, then I did some green, and then I started doing, then I added plain weave over top of that. And then I went in with white, because what I don't want for this piece is for it to feel really muddy. And sometimes I do find what helps that not happen is white. So like, again, maybe what we're looking at, which is a view that you would most certainly see where I live in Northern Canada, which is, it's almost like you're looking top down at a forest where the colors are starting to change, but it has snowed already. That's kind of what I'm going with like the white background. And I might throw in some pink. I might bring more colors in this than I had initially planned, and that's okay. I think, again, the initial inspiration was just these like tufts of color, and they're sort of in a organic but kind of circular shape, kind of like this, and you can sort of see between the different trees and whatnot. But in terms of like just this, I really like this. There's something fun about it, and it's looking very messy right now, but I can absolutely go and trim everything shorter and more even later if I decide to. But I like where it's at so far. I like the idea of it being really full of volume. And when you can imagine this kind of poking up out of the wood, I think that's really neat. So I'm gonna keep going with this. I don't know what color I'm doing next or anything, but I'm kind of liking where it's heading so far. All right, so I did end up using some pink because I'm just looking at all that I have, and I'm like, I think I just need to let it come together how it wants to come together. I'm trying not to mess up my buckets too badly, but I'm kind of liking where it's headed. And what I'm gonna do now that I have sort of, you have yellow, green, blue, pink, which I think is a good split of the colors, simply because I don't have a ton. I could bring in a little bit of purple, but I don't have a ton of sort of the purple and red families, but I might throw a little bit in there just to like bring some different sections to this. But you can see that right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 little bundles. So now moving forward, what I want to do is start staggering those bundles so that not everything looks super even, because I do want this to feel really organic. I do think doing it really even could be cool, but I want to go for more of that organic look. So, maybe I will just throw in a little bit of purple here, and we'll just go for something that's nice and colorful. So I'm going to just start out in the middle so that I can start staggering the bunches of color. And I'm using a Giord's knot to do this. So when I'm grabbing some longer lengths of this, it ends up just being a Raya knot, but it's called a Giord's knot because it allows you to not have to pre-trim the pieces that you're using to do it. So what I do is I figure out the 2 strings I want to work on, which for me is going to be these 2. So just so that you can see, I'm working on these 2 warp strings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the right one and I'm going to go underneath it from left to right. So we're underneath this one with our short tails off to the right. We're going to bring the short tails over both of the 2 warp strings and then bring it down, under, and through. So now we end up with just a Ryan knot, and you can kind of adjust it there and then cut off the excess without having cut these pieces into smaller pieces. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, I'm gonna keep doing this little purpley red section, and then I'll start reusing some of the other colors that I've already used. But because I have, you know, a bunch of different materials in this bucket, I can make like the next section of yellow maybe a little bit brighter or maybe a little bit darker. I can kind of mix and match that way so that this really truly feels kind of organic. And I'm realizing there's something that this is reminding me of that I've seen before. I'm gonna see if I can find it because I feel like it's reminding me more of colorful succulents maybe. I think this is what this is actually reminding me more of, is like these beautiful, this is from a website called Urban Plants, beautiful, colorful succulents, and they're all different colors. But I think this is now sort of my new inspiration. And once I looked at this, it really reminds me of that. So I'm glad that I found something that kind of looks like what I'm doing. And I think this is gonna end up being a really happy piece. Okay, I've just been like kind of zoning out and doing this, and it's really fun. I don't know what it is about this, but I think maybe because it's so random, it's kind of fun because there's no exactness or precision that needs to happen, and it looks really cool. I'm really enjoying this. Like, I feel like I want to make more scrap weavings just because there's something really satisfying about this, and it almost is giving this texture right now of like almost like fireworks, which is kind of fun. Obviously fireworks are a little more precise than this, but I am really liking this. It's very happy to look at as well, which is nice and fun. But I'm really enjoying myself. And I think the randomness of it, yeah, there's just something really enjoyable about that for me right now. So I'm doing sort of a tuft of color and then all around it doing some white before I move on to doing more color. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. This is definitely one, if you like this style of piece, that personally I am finding that I can kind of just zone out and do it, and there's something really satisfying about it, and the colorfulness of it, which if you have been watching this channel for a long time, if you're one of our OG audience members, you'll probably be shocked at how much more color I'm using now, because I used to be very like, I will only use neutrals. And now I'm like absolutely loving using color. There's something so happy about it, and it's just kind of like, it's literal eye candy, and I love it. So, okay, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, you guys, I think I'm at a good point where I'm gonna pause. I think I have woven as much as I want to weave today, but I absolutely love where this is going. I look at it and it just makes me happy, all the texture and the color. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you enjoyed this one, make sure you check out this one next.